أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So as you know, inshallah, today we're going to talk about Ramadan, and even though it feels like there's still some time for Ramadan, I think it's going to these couple of months are going to roll ahead really quickly. And it just so happens that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen for us to experience another Ramadan during the pandemic. And of course, there's some hikmah and some wisdom and benefit in this for us all. So I know that, this is the time where people start feeling a bit despondent, and they start feeling that because of the pandemic and lockdowns and possibility of masajid being shut down, this is all going to affect our Ramadan. But we need to remember that these external factors, they're not going to affect the essence of Ramadan. That's the main thing. And also for us to focus on the fact that every affair of the believer is good for him. So when good happens, we are grateful and it is good for us. And when we go through a difficulty or a time of a testing time, then we are patient, and that is good for us. And the Prophet ﷺ used the word ajabun. So it is an amazing matter that whatever happens to the believer, it is good for him. So, with these kind of thoughts in our mind, we should try and move forward, looking forward to this Ramadan, inshallah. Like I said, that the essence of Ramadan remains the same. Even if the external factors change, the essence remains the same, and that is the main thing that we are after, and that is the main thing that will affect our Ramadan. And of course, it's a good reminder for us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not confined to time or place. So whether we can go to the masjid or not, we can still be close to Allah. And whether we are able to, for example, break fast with our friends and family or not, we can still be close to Allah. So these are really the things that we need to be focusing on. I think, unfortunately, we spend a lot of time doing what I call analysis paralysis, where we end up dissecting, our situation so much that we lose focus. And rather than, focusing on the real thing at hand, we become distracted and we start looking at, a lot of other technicalities. And what we need to stop doing is we need to stop doing that, and we need to start focusing on our actions. So the situation is what it is, and now we need to focus on what we can do and how we can move forward and how we can make the most of this Ramadan. And so that's where we need to put our energy, not in analyzing the situation and blaming the pandemic for all our, failings and our shortcomings, which is, again, a very easy thing for us to do. But rather, we need to focus on how we can use this time, due to the situation, to our benefit. And so, whereas Ramadan is mostly a communal thing, it is a communal, you could say, a time for communal bonding, and it focuses a lot on on community. We can use this time on one-on-one bonding with Allah. We can make it more personal, and we can personalize this Ramadan, and that's how we will benefit more from it. Normally, like I said, we depend a lot on external factors to bond with Allah. So we depend on the Taraweeh in the masjid. We depend on, meeting our friends and family. We depend on going out, helping out within the communities. And we feel that this is the thing that helps us come close to Allah. Of course, when you go out, then there's an opportunity, for example, for sadaqat and umrah, etc. But like I said, that we depend a lot on external factors to bond with Allah, and this is a chance for us to personalize our Ramadan and bond with Allah on a more personal level. So with that out of the way about the pandemic, I wanted to convey 5 main concepts about Ramadan, and I will follow that with a few practical tips that I will leave you with to maximize your Ramadan and get the most out of it, inshallah. So the first concept that I want to talk about is purpose. And whenever we do anything, it is very important to try and understand why we are doing it. Of course, going into anything without knowing why you're doing it and without having any objectives in mind, it's mostly going to be a wasted action. So what you will get out of it will bear little or no fruit. And so it's very important to understand what we are doing and why we're doing it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created us for nothing except His worship. As Allah says in the Quran, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And of course, this is one of the key ibadas that Allah has obligated on us, that is the fast. And the purpose of this fast is mentioned in the Quran, in the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ramadan. And Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامَ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ. So Allah is saying that fasting has been prescribed for you like it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may learn. Allah is not telling us that so that you may learn about hunger, so that you may learn about thirst, so that you may learn about giving up X, Y, or Z. Rather, Allah is telling us that this has been prescribed to us so that we may learn taqwa. So the main purpose of fasting is to attain taqwa. And it is very important that we understand that, and that we try and understand what taqwa is and how we can attain it. Otherwise, we will literally just go through the fast and come out of the fast and nothing will have changed. So the fasting is supposed to have an effect on us. It's supposed to have an effect on our hearts. And unless we understand that and internalize that, it's not going to have that effect on us. So when we go into Ramadan, we should come out of Ramadan feeling a change, feeling that we have gone through a transformation. And if we don't, then we have not achieved the purpose of Ramadan. Taqwa is basically protecting yourself from yourself or from your nafs, from shaitan and his whisperings, and from the displeasure or anger of Allah. And protecting yourself from Allah's anger is the most important thing, because if Allah is angry with you, then you have basically lost everything. And even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many descriptions of punishments in the Quran, punishments in the hellfire, the worst punishment in the akhirah will be to be disconnected from Allah, to be distanced from Allah and to never be able to see Him. That will be the worst punishment. And sorry, somebody's asking if this will be recorded. Yes, it will be recorded and it will be uploaded, inshallah. The worst thing a person can experience is the wrath of Allah, the anger of Allah, and being distanced from Allah. So that just adds another dimension to taqwa, and why taqwa is so important, and why it is so important for us to shield ourselves from Allah's anger, because we don't want to end up in that situation where we are distanced and disconnected from Allah. Now, if you think about it practically, fasting is a physical thing, right? You give up food, you give up drink, you give up intimacy, and that is basically your fast. So one might ask that this is a physical thing that we are doing, so how does it nurture something spiritual in us? Because what is the seat of taqwa? The seat of taqwa is the heart. And so how does a physical action affect your heart? How does something physical you do, how is that going to impact something like your heart? If anybody wants to give any answers, you can either unmute your mic or you can write in the chat box. But I want to hear from you, and I want to know what your thoughts are. How does that physical action affect your spirituality, or how does it affect your heart? So I know a lot of you were hoping that there wouldn't be any questions on the other platform, but here we are. And I like to make sure that everyone's awake and everyone's interacting, and I'm not just speaking to myself. So no ideas, no comments.
Sister Fatima, it will
Yes.
bring tranquility to the heart.
Okay. How does leaving food and drink bring tranquility to your heart?
I think gratitude.
Okay. Anybody else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Yes.
It also brings a sense of calm, a sense of humility, knowing that Allah is the only one that you can rely on. Because when you are fasting, you are somehow brought to a level of a fakir, because you are making adkar all the time, and you're in constant remembrance of Allah, and you know that at the end of the day you are going to be fine. You're going to get a meal at the end of the day, because you know Allah is the one who provides. So even your sense of trust is heightened.
Okay. I mean, you guys are going in the right direction, but you've just missed out on one important aspect. So I will break it down for you now. So I've got some answers in the chat box as well, but you guys are still missing out on that one aspect. Okay, so basically, we as human beings are made up of body and soul, right? Okay, so somebody seems to have given the right answer in the chat box. So you're divided into body and soul, and the body is the thing that gets your attention and gets all your nurturing throughout the year. It's all about the body, right? And this is the time when you have it's this 1 month in the whole year that you actually now pay attention to your soul, which has been, you could say, more or less neglected. And now is the time that you get to give some time and attention to your soul. And one of the purposes of Ramadan is to take you away from focusing on your on your body. And the focus is taken away from food. The focus is taken away from physical pleasures. Okay? And that is all so that you can focus now and nurture your soul, because that's what has been neglected the whole year. And the soul has got two, you could say, temptations, or two types of enemies, however you want to put it. And what do you think are the two enemies or the two temptations of the soul?
Worldly desires.
Okay, that's correct. So I would put that as you could say indulgences. So that's your nafs, okay? And the other temptation or the other type of enemy is shaitan. So you have two enemies of your soul. One is the shaitan and one is your own nafs. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done us a favor and He has locked up the shaitan. Right? So the shaitan is out of the picture. So now what is left is just you. So it's just your internal enemy that is left. So the shaitan is like your external enemy, and then the nafs is your internal enemy. And your nafs is actually the most difficult to deal with and the most difficult to train and to tame. And this is left open during Ramadan. So whatever your shortcomings and your slips are now, they are all, like people say that how comes the shayateen are chained up and I'm still sinning. So that's because the shayateen are chained up, but your nafs is not, and your nafs is still, it's still open to sinning. And the nafs is then further divided into a higher self and a lower base self. So the higher self of the nafs is your spiritual self, your ibadah, your heart and your soul turning to Allah, your love for Allah, your fear for Allah, tawakkul in Allah. And then you have your lower self, which is your base needs, your indulgences, food, drink, intimacy, etc. And so what you do with your nafs during the fast is you stop feeding the nafs, the base part of your nafs, and you increase the ibadah, the spiritual part of your nafs. So you subdue the physical and you boost the spiritual aspect of your nafs. And so when you cut off the intake and you increase the burden on the soul through extra ibadah, you basically weaken the nafs, and that's how you train and control your nafs, and through that you increase your taqwa. Is that I hope that's clear, but that's how your physical deprivation gives you a spiritual benefit. So usually when one goes down, the other goes up. So throughout the year, we nurture our bodies and we pay a lot of attention to our physical needs. And as a result, a lot of the times our spiritual side goes down. So our soul suffers. And then when you subdue the physical needs and you starve them, then proportionately your spirituality and your soul gets stronger, and your taqwa will get stronger, and it's that aspect of your soul that goes up. So although through fasting you learn about how the poor feel when they don't have enough food, you learn about hunger, you learn about thirst, you learn about all the blessings that Allah has given you, because now you have to leave those blessings. Although that happens, those are just fringe benefits. But the main benefit that you get out of fasting is the change in your heart, and that is nurturing taqwa. So even though the fast is a physical action, it doesn't work on your mouth or your stomach. It works on your heart, and it develops and changes and transforms your heart. And that's what it is meant to do. So the people who are not able to achieve this objective, then what happens with them is that they merely starve themselves. And the Prophet ﷺ said, one might fast and he gets nothing from his fast but hunger. One might pray at night, but he gets nothing from his prayer but fatigue. This is when you are doing these actions, but they are so external and they are so disconnected from your internal that you don't achieve the main objective of your fast, which is to gain taqwa. There might be 10 people sitting on a table of iftar, and these 10 people have been fasting, and they've all sat together to I'm just going to take questions a little later on, so you can leave them in the chat box, and I'll look at the chat box when I'm done. Otherwise, we won't be able to get through this, inshallah. Okay, so you might have 10 people sitting on an iftar spread, but each of these people are at different levels in terms of their fast, because it's not just a physical thing. So they all left out food and drink and intimacy, but still their fasts are of different levels. It's similar to when Umar radiallahu anhu, he said to Ibn Umar, when during Hajj, at the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abdullah ibn Umar, he saw all the Hujjaj, reciting talbiyah and saying the takbir, and they were in their ihram, making tawaf. And so he said, "Oh my father, look at the great number of Hujjaj." And Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Oh my son, the people are many, but the Hujjaj are few." So what he's saying is that yes, all these people are here and they're fulfilling the same rights, but those who are achieving the real objectives of Hajj are few. And it's the same thing with Ramadan and fasting. So we have a lot of people who fast, but there's very few, or I should say there are a lot of people who leave food and drink, but there are a few people who actually fast. So it's very important to make this connection between your physical aspect of your fast and connecting it to your spiritual, the spiritual aspect of your fast, and basically connecting it to the state of your heart. And so later on, when I talk about practical tips, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what are some of the things you should be reflecting on in terms of these objectives of fasting. Okay, the second thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of Ramadan is the concept of rahmah and maghfirah. So one of the main themes of Ramadan is forgiveness of sins. And of course, if you are forgiven, then inshallah, you can achieve your main objective, which is to free yourself from the hellfire and to enter Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the beginning of Ramadan is rahmah, the middle is maghfirah, and the end is freedom from the fire. And the rahmah and the maghfirah of this month is so vast, and it is that in Ramadan the gates of Jannah are opened, the gates of hell are closed, the shayateen are chained up. So you can imagine how much rahmah is descending from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this time, during this month. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ said that may his nose be rubbed in dust, a man for whom Ramadan comes and then goes before he is forgiven. So basically he's saying that a person who cannot attain Allah's forgiveness in this month, then basically, when is he going to attain forgiveness? If you're not going to attain forgiveness in this month, then when are you going to attain it? Because this is really the main time to attain Allah's forgiveness. The Prophet ﷺ also said, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. It was said, O Messenger of Allah, you ascended the mimbar and said, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. He said, Jibreel came to me and said, if Ramadan comes and a person is not forgiven, he will enter hell and Allah will cast him far away. Say Ameen. So I said, Ameen. He said, O Muhammad, if both or one of a person's parents are alive and he does not honor them and he dies, he will enter hell and Allah will cast him far away. Say Ameen. So I said, Ameen. He said, if you are mentioned in a person's presence and he does not send blessings upon you and he dies, he will enter hell and Allah will cast him far away. Say Ameen. So I said, Ameen. So he explained why he had said Ameen 3 times. The part we want to focus on is where Jibreel alayhi salam said to him, if Ramadan comes and a person is not forgiven, he will enter hell and Allah will cast him far away. Say Ameen. Now this is a very, very serious matter. It's not a small matter. So Jibreel alayhi salam is essentially supplicating against someone who witnesses Ramadan but is not forgiven. So according to Jibreel alayhi salam, this failing to achieve Allah's forgiveness in this month is so severe that it is deserving for a person to be thrown into the hellfire and distanced from Allah's mercy if he is not able to attain Allah's forgiveness in this month. To try and explain that concept to you even better, imagine if you came out of your house one day and it is raining $100 bills, okay? And your natural reaction would be to grab as many of these $100 bills as you can, right? And let's say you have a neighbor who is sleeping through this time, and so they were not able to come out and grab these bills that are falling from the sky. And so you would feel sorry for that person, right? You would feel that they really missed out. I managed to get whatever, $1,000 or $2,000 and my neighbor got nothing because they slept through it. And it would be very strange for you to come out and have this rain of $100 bills and for you not to pick up anything, for you not to get even a single bill, right? So that's how how odd it would be for somebody to go through Ramadan and not be able to pick up on this maghfirah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah is descending in huge amounts, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving people in large numbers. And if you can't be one of them, then you have really lost, and you have really deserved what will come your way after this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives many opportunities during Ramadan for forgiveness. So Allah says, so the Prophet ﷺ told us, man sama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbih. Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbih. And he said, man qama Laylatul Qadr imanan wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbih. So he's told us of 3 golden opportunities to achieve this objective of getting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees people from the hellfire from day 1 of Ramadan. From the first night of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees people from the fire. And we shouldn't wait till the end of Ramadan to ask for Allah's forgiveness. We should try and do it from the beginning. We should be amongst those people who get it from the beginning of Ramadan. And this is a big blessing from Allah. I mean, imagine that if you fast Ramadan or fast a day of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all your previous sins. And we have so many sins. So this is so kind of Allah and so generous of Allah that for one action that we do, He can erase all our previous mistakes, all our previous sins. And so this is not an opportunity for any of us to miss. And you can imagine how wretched a person would be to be in this month and yet not be forgiven, and yet not avail this this golden opportunity of attaining Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness. And of course, these are just a few numbered days. Ramadan starts and finishes so quickly. And very few of us are able to actually reap the benefits, the complete benefits and fruits of this month. So really, the first day of Ramadan is when we should start. A lot of people, they come into Ramadan, they literally roll into it, unplanned, unprepared. And before they know it, they're around the last 10 days of Ramadan, and they feel a lot of regret that they didn't make the most of it. So preparation is, of course, very important. It's just like if you were inviting some important people to your house for dinner, for example, you wouldn't just get up a couple of hours before they're due to come and say, well, I better prepare something for them, right? The more important the person is who's about to come, the more preparation you're going to put into it. So you're going to start shopping a week in advance, and you're going to, make a menu. You're going to try and make sure everything is there and the house is cleaned, and you're going to put in a lot of preparation so that when the day actually comes, you've got everything set and ready. So it really depends on how important Ramadan is to you, and that's how much preparation you're going to put into it. That's how much you're going to prepare yourself for entering into this month. The next concept is that of Quran and dua. Of course, this is the month of the Quran. This is when the Quran was revealed. And this is a really good chance and a good opportunity, especially for those who have been disconnected from the Quran throughout the year. This is a good time for them to bond with the Quran, for them to develop a relationship with the Quran, strengthen their relationship with the Quran. And there are many things you can do in this month. You can recite, you can reflect, you can try and understand what you're reading. And you should plan this, and you should set aside specific time for the Quran. It shouldn't just be a random hour here and there, but it should be something that you have planned out, and you have set out specific parts of your day which are just for you to sit down and either recite Quran or reflect on the verses, or memorize some Quran, etc. Of course, traditionally, recitation is the thing that people in the past have done the most. With people like Imam Shafi'i reciting the Quran 60 times in a month, which means he was completing the Quran once in the day and once in the night. And the Quran is something that has transformed people over the centuries. So you have Sahaba who were burying their children alive. And when the Quran came, it transformed the same people into people who were promised Jannah. So the Quran has a very, very strong impact on us. But that's only going to happen when we connect with the Quran in that way, when we allow the Quran to have this impact on us. And for children in particular, for those of you who have children, it's always a good idea to give them a mushaf which is primarily theirs and it belongs to them, because it just makes it a more personal attachment to the Quran and makes a more personal connection with the Quran. So now they feel this is my Musaf and I read from this, I put my bookmarks here, I do XYZ, and this is my Quran. So it's a very useful thing to give each child their own personal Musaf that they can use throughout Ramadan and throughout the year. And along with Quran, I've paired it with dua. So dua is something that is a very big part of this month. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is one of the months where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the closest to us. So Allah is very close to us in sujood. Allah is very close to us when we are at the Kaaba. Allah is very close to us during tahajjud. And another time that Allah is very close to us is during Ramadan, especially just before you break your fast. Making dua at that time is one of the best times and the most likely times for your duas to be accepted. So this is really the time where you need to disconnect from worrying about food and kitchen and preparing the best iftar spread. And you should be really focusing on the last few minutes just before breaking your fast. You should be focusing at that time on dua and on, spending, setting that time aside just for you to speak to Allah. Unfortunately, a lot of us are busy in the kitchens and, trying to get food out. And we just lose, again, this is all about focus. And so, we need to keep reminding ourselves what is the purpose of Ramadan. And that's why I started with talking about the purpose. And so if you have your purpose in front of you all the time, then you're less likely to get distracted and forget what it is that you're trying to achieve. The last point that I wanted to mention was something that I mentioned already, which is that this month is about shifting our focus from physical pleasure and physical satisfaction to spiritual pleasure. And that is the pleasure of the heart. That is the real pleasure. That is the real seat of happiness. And how do you get that pleasure of the heart? Anyone? How do you achieve real, true happiness and pleasure, which is the pleasure of the heart? Yes, very good. When you connect with Allah. Connecting with Allah is the only way you will achieve real happiness and real pleasure. And so the purpose of this month is really to free our mind and our time from food and achieving these fulfilling these physical needs, and to rather focus on our soul. So it's about removing the focus from feeding our bodies to feeding our souls. And just give the least time and least concern to food. So iftar should be simple, suhoor should be simple, and it should be quick, and it should be something that you can put together quickly and, get through it quickly and then carry on with, your spiritual needs. So don't focus on food for your bodies, focus on food for your souls during this time. And I just want to end with some practical tips so that we can take some questions, because I think you will learn a lot more from, having these questions answered, because these are really your concerns and this is really what is going to impact your Ramadan. So from the practical tips that I had, the first one was just to stay focused and remember your objectives. Your objective is to attain taqwa and to transform your heart. You want to change your heart for the better. And And that is not going to happen unless you keep reminding yourself and you focus on that. And you will attain that taqwa through, training and controlling your nafs. So this fast should cause a change inside you. It should cause a transformation inside you. And the proof that you have succeeded in doing that is going to be when you come out of Ramadan and you are able to continue with those habits and with those actions that you were doing in Ramadan. Because remember, Ramadan, there's a handful of things that we are doing, and it's like a full month of training. So we're fasting, we're praying qiyam, we're reciting Quran. And these, and if you want, we can add that we're giving sadaqah. These things can be carried on outside Ramadan. So you can carry on fasting Mondays and Thursdays, or the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every month. You can carry on with reciting Quran every day. You can set a portion for yourself, even if it's not as much as you were doing in Ramadan, but you can still do some, whether it's 5 pages or it's 10 pages or 7 pages, whatever you can manage. But as long as you can be consistent with it, it's important to do that. Qiyam, again, is something that you can carry on to outside Ramadan, so you can continue with tahajjud. So these should be habits that you are developing in Ramadan and that you will be able to carry on with outside Ramadan. And sadaqah, of course, is something you can carry on doing after Ramadan as well. Okay. The second practical tip I wanted just to mention is that don't make the fast just about hunger and thirst. So yes, you're leaving your food and drink, but learn to leave sins. So while we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, and we're hoping that Allah has forgiven us and that Allah will forgive us, we need to train ourselves to leave the things which are displeasing to Allah, and to do more of the things that are pleasing to Allah. Remember, I always say that it's easy to do good actions. So it's easy to pray a couple of rakahs, it's easy to give some sadaqah, it's easy to fast, it's easy to do these good actions. But it's really tough to give up sins. And that requires a lot of sacrifice and struggle. Whatever it might be that you are doing, whatever your indulgences are or addictions are, whether you're lying or cheating or disobediences, riba, we tend to think of, when we think of sins, we think of zina and khamar and riba. But of course, there are so many other sins that we are doing day to day, which are things really that we need to work on and we need to shed. So fasting is not just about giving up food and drink, but it's about giving up all those things which are displeasing to Allah. And if you give up even one sin, you feel so good and you feel so amazing. You feel like flying. You feel like a huge burden has been lifted off your shoulders. The third practical tip I wanted to share with you is that you must reserve some time, which is like some private time for you and Allah. So it can be a time for reflection. It can be a time to make dua. It can be a time to ask yourself, about your situation with Allah. Ask yourself about your obedience to Allah. Ask yourself, are you coming closer to Allah or are you moving further away from Him? Look back at your life. Look back at your years and your actions with every day that is passing. Are you coming closer to Allah or moving further away? Think about your previous Ramadan. How you entered it, how you left it. Do you have any regrets from your previous Ramadan? Are there any improvements you want to make this Ramadan? These are all things you need to, if you can't remember them like that, then write them down. So that when you sit down, you can think about these things, you can reflect on them, you can speak to Allah, you can make dua to Allah. This is very, very important, and it's a very good opportunity for us right now to be able to do this because of some of the limitations we have due to the current situation and the pandemic. And I would think the best time for this would be either before or after suhoor. So you get that last part of the night when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends and He's closest to us. So you have, you can strengthen that closeness. So Allah is close to us because it's the time for tahajjud, and He is close to us because it's Ramadan. So you can imagine the closeness you can experience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you were to use this time and benefit from this time. So don't just spend all this time eating and drinking, but reserve some of this time just for you and Allah. And you will see, you will start enjoying this time so much that whether it's Ramadan or it's not Ramadan, you will look forward to spending this time with Allah. And it's very important that you realize that this time that you're spending with Allah, this is the time for your soul. Okay, so the sahur time where you're eating is the time for your body, but this is the time for your soul. And remember that when we die and when we are in our graves and our bodies disintegrate, when we come out of our graves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace our bodies and He will give us new bodies, right? But your soul will be the same. The soul that you had in the dunya and that you died upon, that is the soul that you will be resurrected upon. So you'll have a new body, but you're stuck with your soul. And so it's so important to work on this soul now and to polish it up now and to improve it now, so that we are not disappointed when we are resurrected, and that we are happy with what we are stuck with and what we have. So pay attention to your soul, and this is one of the best times to do it. Okay, the fourth point that I wanted to mention is about the night of Laylatul Qadr. So when you get to the last third of Ramadan, the last 10 nights, you should have a new schedule for this time. And you should be even, you should feel that you're even closer to Allah now. And you should feel even more disconnected from your dunya now. You should feel even more disconnected from your physical needs or physical pleasures now. So in this last 10 nights, you should try and get even closer to Allah and get even further away from your dunya and your dunya distractions. As you know, the Prophet ﷺ, he would observe i'tikaf during this time, where he would not even stay at home anymore. So even though we are at home, we need to try and make ourselves a plan or a schedule where we can try and raise the bar and do a bit more than we have been doing all this time. As you know, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that it is better than 1,000 months, which is about 83 years of ibadah. So that one night is better than 83 years of ibadah. So imagine if you have managed to get, let's say, 20 Laylatul Qadrs. That's, you can do the maths for that and see how much reward you have been able to get so far. And any action done on that night is counted as you having done that action for 83 plus years. So for example, if you pray on that night, it's as if you have prayed for over 83 years. If you recite Quran on that night, it's as if you have recited Quran for over 83 years. If you give sadaqah on that night, it's as if you have given sadaqah for over 83 years. So the reward is multiplied by so many times that you should try and pack in as much as you can during these last 10 nights. And there is so much hikmah that we don't know when exactly Laylatul Qadr is, because it encourages us to look for it and to strive and to make an effort throughout the month and throughout the last 10 nights. If we knew exactly when it is, then And of course, we would just, work hard on that one night. Whereas when we strive and struggle and work throughout this month, and especially throughout the last 10 nights, it is really good for us, and it is really what we need. Because if you think about it, Allah is not in need of this ibadah. Allah is not in need of us standing for hours. Allah is not in need of us reciting so much Quran. Allah is not in need of us taking out this private time to spend with Him. Allah does not need it. We are the ones who need it. And so when we don't know exactly when it is, and we strive and we look for it throughout the month or throughout the last 10 nights, then that is really good for us, because we are the ones ultimately in need of this ibadah, in need of doing all these actions. And of course, Laylatul Qadr is another opportunity for forgiveness, as we mentioned earlier on. And the last practical tip I wanted to share with you is really about children, for those of you who have children. So I wanted to mention something slightly off topic, but I will tie it in with this with the topic of Ramadan. So I don't know how many of you have heard about the marshmallow experiment, and this is something that I think most psychologists would have studied. And what they noticed is they were trying to gauge how they can calculate people's success. Basically, how can you tell that such a person will be successful in the future? So they tried to look at different parameters. They said, okay, is it IQ? Is it, their academic excellence? And they said, no, academic excellence does not necessarily lead to success. Is it this? Is it charisma? Is it personality? Is it XYZ? They finally came to the conclusion through this experiment that it was the children who pass this experiment who grow up to be very successful adults. So what is this experiment? So basically, you give the child a marshmallow and you put it in front of him, and you tell him that if he eats that, then that's all he gets. But if he can wait for 10 minutes, then he gets 2 marshmallows. And so they pictured these, they filmed these kids, and of course, it's very difficult for the child because he can see the marshmallow, he can smell it, it's right there in front of him. It's just, a fingertip away. It's like, your bliss is a fingertip away. And so, of course, there are some kids who just thought, oh, scrap the other one, let me just enjoy this one. And they just, went for it. And then there are some kids who waited because they're thinking of, they're thinking long term, and they're thinking that, wait, if I can just, hold up on this for a little bit, I'm going to get 2. And so what this teaches them really is a concept called delayed gratification. And delayed gratification is something that we need to explain to our children. So, for example, when a child fasts, it's natural that a child is going to think that, I've stayed hungry the whole day, and at the end of it, I got a meal, which is, something that makes him very happy. I mean, that first bite into your date, or the first sip of water, it tastes better than any other sip of water or any other date that you would have had. It's important to sit down with a child and explain to them that if they fast today, what awaits them is Allah's Jannah, is Allah's reward, is Allah's pleasure, is meeting Allah, is entering Jannah through the gate of Rayyan. And these are all things which are not going to happen immediately. And so that's why the child needs to understand that we need to try and turn their focus to these rewards. We need to try and turn their attention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, and make that their primary focus. So a lot of the times we will try and fill in that time lapse with gifts and praise, and sometimes some people give money, etc. But it's important to try and keep their focus on the action and the reward from Allah, or on the action and the pleasure from Allah, so that whether there is a physical, tangible reward in between or not, they will do it because they want Allah's pleasure, and that Allah's pleasure is more real to them than anything else. So it's important to sit down and maybe, have a chat with them and explain these concepts to them, so that when they do this action, that is where their focus is. They're constantly thinking about meeting Allah, about Allah being pleased with them, about Jannah and all the na'im of Jannah, etc. So this is really where their focus should be. And so with that, inshallah, I have come to the end of what I wanted to share with you. There are so many people who were with us last Ramadan and they are not with us this Ramadan. And they would not have, a lot of them would not have thought that was going to be their last Ramadan. And we don't know if this is going to be our last Ramadan. So this is really the time for us to try and do our best and to put our best into this month and try and raise the bar for ourselves and try and, multiply our achievements, at least push ourselves as much as we can. We have less distractions because of less community and less, we'll be wasting less time going out, and we'll be spending more hours indoors, and so we should try and use this time for our benefit. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who reach Ramadan, make us amongst those who are forgiven by Him and who are freed from the hellfire. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this Ramadan from us and reunite us with our loved ones in the Akhirah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. So if you have any questions you want to speak out, you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to look at the chat box and see if I can answer any of these questions. Would you say that if we lowered our physical actions outside of Ramadan, it would serve the same purpose of increasing our higher nafs? Yes, inshallah, it would. Like I said, if one goes down, the other goes up. So when you pay less attention and you give less effort to your physical self, then yes, you will by default give more attention to your spiritual self, and that will go up. So you would be able to achieve that outside Ramadan as well. Of course, Ramadan is an easier time for us to do it because of Allah's rahmah and His mercy and Allah's blessings in this month. Okay, what does it mean that He frees people from the hellfire during Ramadan? Does that mean that in the course of the person's life, no matter what sins they commit, they will not spend even a little time in the hellfire? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees us from the hellfire, it means that inshallah on the day of judgment, we will not enter the fire. We will go through other things during our life perhaps to remove our sins. So every time we go through a calamity, every time we go through hardship, the sakarat of maut, the grave where you might have punishment in the grave, these are all different levels of purification, because nobody can enter Jannah unless they are purified. And then if all these and the horrors of the Day of Judgment, the difficulty of standing on the Day of Judgment, crossing the sirat, these are all things which are removing our sins, because they are all difficulties. If those are not enough to remove our sins, and our sins are still so many that we are still loaded with sins, that's when we will enter the fire. So if Allah frees you from the hellfire during Ramadan, and then after Ramadan you continue to sin, I don't know if that means that once Allah has freed you, that now you can commit any sins and you will not be punished, or that you don't have the risk or the danger of entering the fire anymore. So I don't know the answer to that. Organization for those of us who work full time. Okay, so for those of you who work full time, I think that's actually in some ways a benefit. Why do I say that? Let me explain myself. So I think that our day is like a shelf in a cupboard. So if you were to take lots of clothes and without folding them, if you were to just shove them into this shelf, you will maybe get 15 pieces of clothing, or maybe 12 to 13 pieces of clothing inside this way, right? Because you just like shove them into the cupboard. Now, if you take those clothes out and you fold them, and now you put them in the cupboard, you'll probably get twice as many clothes in that shelf, because now you've flattened them, folded them, and now you've neatly put them into that shelf. So I think that people who are working full time, they can actually achieve more because they can organize their time. Because they have limited time, they're forced to organize it. Whereas a lot of us who are just sitting at home, we just end up with fillers, time fillers, where we will do silly things, waste our time, waste of time things. So we actually achieve less even though we have more time, whereas somebody with less time might achieve more if they're just more organized. So it's all about organization and planning. And so all of us need to plan, because we know that failing to plan is planning to fail. And particular people who have a full schedule and who have, who are working full time, they need to plan even better. So what I would suggest is, of course, take on as much as you're able to do without pushing yourself to an extent where you are only able to do those actions for the first 3 days of Ramadan, and then you just abandon them because it's too much for you. So set yourself realistic goals, and then find those windows in your day where you actually have time and where you're not very tired. So let's say you have a 9 to 5 day, and your evening is free. So what you have to do now is within your evening, you have to set out some time for rest and some time for whatever you want to achieve during Ramadan, whether it's reciting Quran, whether it's reflecting, whether it is your special time, your one-on-one time with Allah, preparing your iftar. So you would just have to literally, I guess, set out specific time for everything, so that that it's once it's planned, then you know what you're getting into, rather than just going into it unplanned and haphazardly doing things. So that way all of us can fit in, for example, an hour for Quran, or about 45 minutes or 40 minutes for Quran. That should be easy enough for all of us to do. Sometimes we are a bit too easy on ourselves, and we say to ourselves that, I'm working so many hours, I come home, I don't have time for this. But if I was to ask you honestly, do you have time to check your WhatsApp messages? Or do you have time to check your email? Or do you have time to go on social media, on TikTok or on Snapchat or whatever it is that you use? And if we were to calculate all the time that you spend on social media, I can guarantee you it will come out to be more than 40 minutes, because when you're having fun, you lose track of time. And so if we tell ourselves that we don't have time, then we need to challenge ourselves, and we need to ask ourselves, do we really not have time? Or do we have time that we are spending in other indulgences, and we are, we're unable to shift that time into something more useful. So we have to really be honest with ourselves, and we have to really I think we have to change gears a little bit. And it's nice that we get this opportunity in Ramadan, because it's almost like throughout the year you're on autopilot, you know. You're just like you're on a roll, you know. And then Ramadan comes and you get a chance to actually stop, and you get a chance to actually sit back and think and reflect and look at everything in front of you. So there is always time. You just need to organize it. And in some cases, you need to shift gears. So you need to shift, you know, that time that you were spending on social media onto, you know, something more substantial and something more fruitful. Whatever that might be, you know, in Ramadan that you want to do. Mostly it will be reciting Quran. But if it is anything else, then, you know, you will have to just schedule it out. Okay, next question. So, COVID fatigue and how do you focus? So, again, like I said, I think Ramadan is a time where it helps you to get out of that mundane routine that you've been in, and it forces you to get into a new routine. And the more you spend time with Quran or in ibadah or in adhkar, the higher you should start feeling spiritually, and the easier it should be for you to snap out of that COVID fatigue. The closer you get to Allah, the better you will feel. It will happen over time, but it will eventually happen. And like I said, I think you will just by default you will just have to come into a new schedule and a new routine, because Ramadan just forces that on you. Other than that, I think there's some very interesting lessons that we've learned through COVID. So yeah, we have become a bit, you could say, you almost feel run down, or as if exhausted, from having to deal with the nature of this pandemic. But I think there's also been a lot of good reflections during this time. For example, just seeing who's in charge, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change things so quickly. And no matter how strong you think you are, how resourceful you think you are, for example, some of us who are used to traveling, and it was such a doddle for us to just pick up our bags and leave. It's almost like Allah's put you in your place, that you can't travel when you want. You will travel when Allah allows you to. So there's a lot of good reflections as well. But yeah, I understand, if you have this fatigue, hopefully when you get into a new schedule, it will help you to come out of it, inshallah. Okay. So previous Ramadans, you felt guilty for not spending the night praying or reading Quran, and that's because I'm guessing you were working. Like I said, Taraweeh is basically tahajjud prayer, and tahajjud can be done anytime after Isha. So once you pray Isha, you can pray your 8 rakahs, whatever you can easily manage. Even if you can recite one page of Quran in each rakah, or you can recite whatever you've memorized, whatever you are able to manage, you can do that straight after Isha. So you can just reserve some time for your suhoor, and another additional maybe 10 minutes for you to sit and just have some time to reflect. And as for reciting Quran, again, do what you are able to do comfortably and with ease. without overburdening yourself, but without underburdening yourself as well. So like I said, we just need to shift that time that we're spending on other things onto, Quran and Salah. So I think that's the best I can say for now. Those working full-time with small children during commute. Okay, somebody's made a suggestion that you can listen to Quran while you're commuting, and this would apply to people in the UK. Also, while preparing iftar, you can listen to things. So yeah, I mean, these are good suggestions. So you can multitask, or at least women can multitask. So while they are doing, for example, if you have a baby that you're nursing, that's a really good time because you're forced to sit down, and that's the time you can sit down and you can recite some Quran or do some adhkar. And adhkar is something you can do all the time. It doesn't really require to be in wudu, or it doesn't require to be in a certain position or in a certain place. You can, do some of these things at any time. And the whole thing about Ramadan is trying to make use of every minute and trying to benefit, from every moment that you have in Ramadan, because there's so much rahmah and barakah in that month. My son is 6 and wants to fast, but I'm not sure how to support him. Revert Muslim, so I didn't go through that when I was a child. Okay, so at the moment, the day I think is going to be neither very long nor very short. And if he's 6 years old, perhaps you can start him by fasting for half the day, and just so that he can get a feel of it. And if he's comfortable, he can fast for as long as he's able to fast. And when you feel that, he's unable to carry on, then you can maybe allow him to break it. And you can explain to him that he is still very young, and it's very nice if he wants to try this, but it is not something that he has to do yet. But you should allow him and encourage him to do it if he wants to do it himself. So you are not pushing him to do it, but he wants to do it himself, and that's something good. And you can, of course, talk to him and explain to him about the basics of fasting, what breaks the fast, what are the do's and don'ts of fasting. And you can also take him through the rewards of fasting and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he personalizes this action and he gives reward for it. So this will be a good opportunity, even though it might not actually be about him leaving the food and drink. So he might just fast for a few hours, but it will be a good opportunity for him to bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to connect with Allah, and to connect this action with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for him to feel that he's doing something for Allah, or he's doing something that is connecting him to Allah and bringing him closer to Allah. So it's really about, it's not so much about the food and the drink, but it's more about his spiritual connection with Allah, and his, him nurturing his soul through this action. Okay, so again, the question about working. So I think we have covered that, and we have said that you just need to mark out the windows of time that you have where you would say that is my free time, or that is time that I can use to do some Quran or some Salah, and you will have to just stick with those timings. So in terms of sleep being an ibadah, whether it's Ramadan or it's outside Ramadan, any action you do with the right intention is an ibadah. So if you sleep early because you want to wake up for tahajjud, then that is an ibadah. If you sleep so that you strengthen your body, so that you're able to stand for long hours and do qiyam, that is an ibadah. So anything you do with the right intention becomes an ibadah. So yes, that's absolutely right. So you can go to sleep, for example, let's say you go to sleep at 9:30. And from 9:30 to 3:30, those 6 hours of sleep, you are reaping ajr if you slept with the right intention. So if you slept with the intention so that you're able to get strength and you're able to stand up and worship Allah, then 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 those 6 hours were all ibadah, and you got lots of ajr for that. So that's why intention is so important before anything we do. And so if you are sleeping during the day or fasting so that you're able to recite more Quran, or so that you're able to do more qiyam, then this is all ibadah. Allah ta'ala alam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for it. Okay, so inshallah, I think if that's all, and if there are no more questions, I will conclude the meeting then, inshallah. Jazakallahu Khairan for taking the time out to join us and to attend the meeting. And I hope, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us amongst those who are forgiven, and through the barakah of attending this gathering. And I hope, inshallah, what I said is going to be of benefit, and inshallah you're able to apply some of the practical tips, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all with an amazing Ramadan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.